allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing in honor of the servicemen and women who have service and continue to serve both here and abroad. Clerk will call the roll call, please.
Councilor Anderson. Here. Crow. Here. D'Angelo. Kinnon. Here. Lucy. Here. Matheson. Here. Murphy. Nestor. Here. Spatafora. Here. Altrino. Here. Bucci.
Here.
Minutes of the council meeting of October 16th and 23rd.
On Councilor Matheson's motion to approve, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Next order of business.
Dear members of the council, pursuant to the provisions of law, I hereby appoint Jean Danton of 18 Clarendon Street, Malden, as a member of the Cultural Council, said term to expire October 23rd, 2015. Very truly yours, Gary Christensen, Mayor. Confirmation is required.
On Councilor Lucy's motion to refer to the Appointments Committee, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Next order of business.
Application for fortune teller's license, psychic readings by Angela, 94 Main Street.
On Councilor Anderson's motion to refer to license, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Next order of business.
Application for permit to sell Christmas trees, Jay's Ice Cream and Pizza, 167 Center Street.
And on Councilor Anderson's motion to refer to license, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Next order of business.
Be it hereby ordained that Section 9.26 of the revised ordinances of 1991 be amended relative to abandoned motor vehicles. Councilor Nestor.
On Councilor Nestor's motion to refer to ordinance, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Referred to ordinance. Next order of business.
Be it hereby ordained that the revised ordinances of 1991 be amended to regulate the use of bike trails in associated areas. Councilors Bucci, Murphy, and Kinnon.
Before I ask that the motion to refer to ordinance, I just want to brief the folks who may be watching at home. This particular paper that we're speaking about, and I'm sure it will have the full support of all 11 of us, even though there's 3 of us listed on tonight's docket. It is really to, now that the bike trail is up and operating and people are utilizing it, I do believe that the City Council has been consistent in their discussion around the concerns folks are raising related to safety, maintenance, things of that nature. So there are some changes going on, but we certainly think it's appropriate timeliness for this ordinance to be put into place. So I would, on Councilor Nestor's motion to refer to ordinance, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Next order of business.
Order that in order to reduce interest costs, the treasurer, with the approval of the mayor, is authorized to issue refunding bonds pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 21A, to refund all or any portion of the remaining principal of and redemption premium and interest on any bonds of the city outstanding as of the date of adoption of this order, and for the payment of all costs incidental and related thereto, and that the mayor and the treasurer are each authorized to take any and all actions necessary to carry out the purpose of this order. And be it further ordered that the treasurer is authorized to file an application with the Municipal Finance Oversight Board to qualify under Mass General Laws, Chapter 44A, any or all of the bonds authorized by this order, and to provide such information and execute such documents as the Municipal Finance Oversight Board may require for these papers. Councilor Lucy.
On Councilor Lucy's motion, refer to finance. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Move to finance. Next order of business.
Ordered that the mayor be authorized to sign the attached agreement relative to maintenance of the Northern Strand Community Trail. Councilors Bucci, Murphy, and Kinnon.
On Councilor Kinnon's motion to refer to public properties, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Move to public property. Next order of business.
Resolved that it is the sense of the City Council that the Traffic Commission install a no-turn-on red sign at the intersection of Pearl and Medford Streets, turning easterly onto Medford Street. Councilor Altrino.
On Council Altrino's motion to pass, all in favor? Opposed? Refer to traffic.
Resolved that it is the sense of the City Council that the school committee and other independent municipal boards consider creating a future residency requirement along with succession planning policy for top management positions, similar to the recently passed ordinance for department heads. Councilors Kinnon and Nestor.
Councilor Kinnon for the paper.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. It may be moot in terms of the last portion of that statement, having the mayor has vetoed an 11-0 vote by the City Council on residency requirement for department heads. I believe we should still pass this and encourage boards and the school committee to consider creating residency requirements for top management positions, and again, also to create succession plans. Having a life stake in the community, particularly in management positions, goes a long way to showing the residents that we care about the community, and goes a long way toward saying, hey, if the principal sends his kids to school here, or the fire chief or the police chief's children live on the same streets as mine, I know they will be empathetic with the issues that I face. So again, this is nothing more than for them to consider it, but they should know that we've done it. So thank you.
Seeing no additional lights, on Councilor Kinnon's motion to pass is a voice. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes. Next order of business.
Dear members of the City Council, I write to let you know that after careful review, I am returning unsigned the ordinance amending Section 8.4 of the revised ordinances of 1991 entitled Residency Requirement. Although I fully support the intent of this ordinance and agree that such a requirement provides a benefit to our community, I offer the following objections and recommendations for your consideration. 1, this legislation does not address the situation where there are no potential candidates for a position or where a qualified candidate has not been able to relocate within the required time frame. This could deprive the city of filling a vacancy. Therefore, I recommend the following language. In the event that upon the closing of the advertised posting period for applications, no person who meets the residency requirement contained in this section applies for the position, or in the event circumstances do not allow compliance within the 6-month time requirement, and if determined by the mayor and city council to be in the best interest of the public to do so, then the provisions hereof may be waived by a majority vote of the city council with the approval of the mayor. Such waiver shall not act to defeat the application of this section to every other applicant or position. 2, the usage of the term essential employee may lead to some confusion as it is generally used to describe public safety personnel acting in emergency situations. I recommend replacing the term with core employee and defining it as follows. A person who is required to supervise, manage, and direct a department or other division of the city in meeting its operational needs, including but not limited to the following employees: police chief, fire chief, solicitor, etc. In addition, the library director is appointed by the library trustees and thus should not be included in the list, as the terms and conditions of employment for that position are not under the purview of the mayor and city council. 3, the definition of residency, as stated, does not guarantee a permanent domicile. I agree that the evidence required establishing proof of residency is sufficient, but I recommend the following to define a bona fide residence: the actual principal residence of the individual, where he or she normally eats and sleeps and maintains his or her normal personal and household effects. 4, although there was some discussion about offering assistance with relocation expenses, signing bonuses, stipends, and other incentives, this is not addressed anywhere in this ordinance. 5, the existing ordinance requires that most clerical, inspectional, and labor personnel be residents of Malden. Under the proposed ordinance, only managers would be required to maintain residency in the city. My preference would be to expand on the existing ordinance, assuring that more of our workforce lives in the city. Again, I agree that a residency requirement as set forth in this ordinance can serve to positively impact our community, but I ask that you consider the recommendations contained herein. If you should have further questions, please contact me. Thank you, and I look forward to crafting an ordinance that furthers our shared goals. Sincerely, Gary Christensen, Mayor.
Thank you. I see lights want to start farther left. Councilor Kinnon.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I got to tell you, at 11:57 p.m. or a.m., I received an email from Mayor Christensen on this, 3 minutes before the council docket was set to go for this week. He held it for a number of days. It's evident to me he knew exactly what he was going to do, and that the wording here reminds me of a former counselor who killed this same thing a number of years ago by putting in things that he knew were poisonous to certain members of the council. So tonight, 2 weeks ago actually, we voted 11-0 to pass this ordinance, an ordinance which had been in committee, had significant debate, and came out and had support from people that in the past had not supported it, but there had been some tweaking that had gone on, and it wasn't overly expansive to say that we're going to include clerks and other rank and file, and yet we cannot include union members. To me, strikes of being discriminatory, and was one of the things that have been discussed over the years, and would be very difficult to support such a thing. But again, it was an 11-0 vote. The mayor does not know better than eight ward councilors and 3 at-large councilors. In the last 18 years, there has not been an 11-0, and probably further, but I guarantee you, in the last 18 years, there has not been an ordinance passed on an 11-0 vote that a mayor has vetoed. This is a starting point that we put forward, not an ending point. But you got to start simple if you're going to succeed. To expand it, to change it, we'll just end it, is what I guarantee you. So, and to make exceptions, we'll end up having what we've had for many, many years without at least trying. So thank you. I make a motion to override the mayor.
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Kinnon. To his right, Councilor Murphy. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'd be glad to speak.
Councilor Anderson.
I think we've all received correspondence from some of our top-ranking city employees asking us to reconsider this, and I think there is some merit in looking at ways that we can take a second look at it. I don't want to end this residency requirement, but I think it is at least, but I don't think we necessarily have to act on it this evening without us stepping back and taking a second look. So I would hope, I mean, I want to hear the other discussion that's going on here, but I would think and I would hope that we might not have to rush one way or the other. I don't think we're pushed with our back against the wall that we have to vote on this evening. So I'm hoping to hear more discussion on it, and perhaps that discussion could take this back to the ordinance committee for us to at least look at what the mayor is saying in his veto. which doesn't necessarily support the veto or kill the veto at this point. I just think that this is an opportunity that we might have to think through whether there are some extenuating circumstances that aren't going to undermine the intent of what we're doing here, because I strongly support the intent of what we're doing here. That is making Malden the place that our top-level employees, our highest-level employees, are vested in this community. And so while I'm supporting of that, I don't think we have to rush to make a decision about the mayor's veto this evening. I think also that I would prefer, and I guess I would just say this, that instead of us having 11-0 votes and then veto, all of our meetings where we discuss these things are open meetings where the mayor and/or his staff are involved in them. And I guess I'd rather hear the objections or the input at that level as opposed to waiting for us to go through all the deliberation and then one person who is equal to the 11 of us shoots it down. So I guess I'd rather have the discussion and the input in the front end, not necessarily in the back end. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Anderson. Councilor D'Arcangelo.
Thank you, Madam President. And I'd like to echo many of the councilors' views. I believe they're wise. And I'd like to look at it from the approach that I'm not sure what changed in the past 2 weeks. We did go through quite an extensive deliberations process on this. Is it perfect? Probably not. And I agree with many of the things you referenced, particularly some of the correspondence that we've gotten. And I've spoken with those individuals, and they have good points. And I think there's ways that we can work around some of that, and we can promulgate regulations, and we can fine-tune definitions, and we can do all that stuff. But to me, we need to put it in play first. Let's first act on it, and then when something arises, if a need arises, we can adjust it, we can tweak something. Maybe there's something we haven't accounted for. But to me, we went through the committee process on purpose, and I think they were purposeful discussions, and this isn't like it's a new concept. This concept has been around for a number of years. We're in gridlock right now, is the reality, is the political reality. A number of things that we've passed and sent to the mayor, he's sent back. So to me, I think we need to kind of get things moving here and speak as a body and everybody stick together and say, look, good points, Your Honor, good points are raised, and we'll take those into consideration. But right now, we need to get moving here on some of these legislative pieces. And I would think that this council, within 2 weeks, hasn't completely changed, and we should go forward with this. Because let's just be clear to the folks at home, too. Let's now get back into the issue and not the process. What we had all the way up until probably the late 60s, early 70s, was we had everybody who worked in Malden lived in Malden. Everybody who worked for the city, or just about everybody who worked for the city, lived in the city. And then it slowly went like this. And now we're to the point where it's the other way, where there's so few people who are department heads that actually live and reside in the city. And even if you go further than that and you look at the wage earners, I think it was out of the top 30 wage earners, all of whom are making close to $200,000, $150,000 a year. And I certainly don't begrudge them for that, but I'm using that to be illustrative of 27 of those people don't reside in Malden. And all I think this ordinance is trying to do, policy-wise, in my mind, is to try to bring it somewhat back in line. And I think we can all agree on that part. So to me, let's put it in place, and if we need to tweak for particular things, then we can go back and promulgate regulations and specify definitions and do whatever we need to do. But right now, I think we really need to send a message that, look, we're together on this, and we want to try to bring, because to me, again, I said this 2 weeks ago when we debated this, and I really fundamentally believe this. We have talent here in Malden. To me, this is a very pro-Malden ordinance. This is saying that we believe in the people that live in Malden and that choose to reside here. And this is a Malden pride issue to me, a large part. Now, that's not taking away any of the qualifications that some of the individuals that we have here who may not reside in the city. They have excellent qualifications. But I would assert that there are provisions within the piece that say, look, we're giving you a grace period of time to be able to relocate back here. There are other provisions that we could put forward, whether it be public safety, things like that. I think we're open to that. But again, to me, let's move on this. Let's send a message that we have the talent here in Malden, and let's get a win as a body to be able to move forward and start this legislative process and work with the mayor. I very much agree with what the councilor said. Let's work with the mayor. You know, we didn't hear this until this veto, a lot of this stuff. That could have been brought up in committee. So to me, let's go forward with this and vote this, and I feel good about it. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor D'Arcangelo. Councilor Murphy.
Am I on? Oh, I am. Thank you, Madam President. I, too, support the residency requirement. I think it's something that Malden does need to ultimately get to. However, when we did vote this 2 weeks ago, I had some concerns, and if you go back in the video, you'll find me questioning the relocation aspect from a financial point of view. We didn't really address it that night, and to me, that is a serious component of this particular bill that hasn't been vetted. And although it did come out of committee, and I'm sure there was tremendous discussion in committee, as we've said on many times during the forum, we all are on different committees, they meet at the same time, and we all don't have the opportunity to sit in and listen to every conversation in every committee. And when it does come to the floor, we don't always have all of the information and haven't always had all of the time to think things through to the end. I agree with Councilor Anderson. I don't see the need to rush this. We have some, what I think are significant comments from the mayor. I think we owe it to ourselves as a body and also to him to at least look at them and see what, if anything, we might want to take from that. I'm not saying we have to change it, although there are a few things in there, such as a waiver, that I think are important for us to consider. We did say that we would give someone 6 months to move back to the city of Malden. If we have an individual who is willing to come back, but let's say their house is in an upside-down mortgage, we might have to give them a year. If someone's willing to work with us, I think we should be willing to work with them, especially if they're the type of person that we want and they are willing to come back to Malden. I don't think we've given some of these provisions enough thought. I would love the opportunity to just have another week or two to review it, see if we want to tweak it a little, and then come back to the table with any amendments and vote to actually put it through, because I think the majority of us do believe residency is the way to go, not only for the top job owners, but what I do believe it will do is it will give the rank and file, it will change their thought process. It will be a trickle-down thought process where hopefully if they want to eventually have one of these top positions and become a chief of the fire or the police department or one of the other departments, they will rethink their thought process about moving out of the city and stay here while they're young with their young family going to our school and, you know, really start to bring the process home that we want to stay in Malden, and we're all here, you know, fighting for a community that we want to see grow stronger and have a brighter future. So I would agree with Councilor Anderson and say let's take the mayor's comments back to committee, discuss them, and then bring the paper back out in a week or two. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Murphy. Councilor Altrino.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Madam President. In looking at the mayor's feedback and the memo that he sent me, I totally supported an ordinance having Malden people in management positions. And as Councilor Kinnon will recall, I was on the committee as well as the full committee. I voted in favor of it, and I'm still in favor of it. Looking at some of the mayor's points, items 2, 3, 4, and 5, I think are just cleaning up the, or putting a little more meat. I think it's in our favor, will make the ordinance stronger. Number 1, where, you know, if there's a vacancy, we can't fill it, which is a concern. I think that's a debate that the council had and was in agreement that we could live with that. But again, item 2, 3, 4, and 5 really are just cleaning it up. Councilor Kinnon makes a good point on, we have an ordinance on number 5. The existing ordinance requires that most clerical, inspectional, et cetera, that would be for non-union employees, because that would be, I believe, a collective bargaining tool that you'd have to use for union employees. You know, I like the idea. I think one of the best things about this is offering people who don't live in the city a chance to come move into the city and see what we have to offer, and hopefully he or she in that new position can make our city even better, whether it's a police, fire, solicitor, whatever that has to be. I'd like to make it very clear that we will help them. I think that's key, that we will help them move into it. I'm not sure who would determine that, if that's Finance Committee. I know we have questions on which committee should be doing which work. So I'm in full support of the ordinance. I don't mind, I do agree with Councilor Anderson. I don't mind taking a look. I think 2, 3, 4, and 5 that the mayor submitted actually gives more meat to the ordinance. I want to see this ordinance really make it, and I think we can be the example for many of our surrounding communities, so we can attract them here in Malden. So I don't mind taking another look at it. I'm still for the ordinance, but I don't mind seeing 2, 3, 4, and 5 adding to what we've already wanted done. And, you know, being on ordinance or wherever this goes again, I want to make sure it's the best one, and you have my support that I think residence requirement for the city employees would be a benefit to the, you know, I remember Chief Coy, when he was chief of police, there was nothing better than seeing him at the gym or at Pasta Market having a bite to eat, and I could discuss issues with him. You know, I went to school with his daughter, and, you know, it just made me feel safer. And now that I'm an elected official, it would make me feel even safer, just to have that talk on the treadmill or something like that. So the money we're paying out in tax dollars that they're going to spend on their property taxes or in the local restaurant or store, we'll get that money that we're giving out to have them, help them move back tenfold. So that's my opinion, Madam Chair. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Council Altrino. Council Lucy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I won't go over what most have said already, but I will say 11-0 vote is is as strong as you can get on a vote. So I can't imagine, you know, if some of these things the mayor does bring up. You know, I remember when I saw the librarian on there, that was a concern to me, and, you know, who appoints it. So there probably is a few things that probably need to be cleaned up, but for the most part, I don't think anyone up here is looking to water this down. I don't think they will. I think the 11-0 vote says a lot for the actual ordinance. So if we took, you know, I don't know if we have to just veto this tonight, or we can send in an ordinance just to, not to water it down, but just look at some of these items, some of these language that's in there that may be not correct. I wouldn't want to pass it or veto it tonight with language that would need to be corrected afterwards, especially if we're not including some positions, or we are including some positions that we really don't have a say in. I just want to make sure that would be right. But again, 11-0 vote, you know, is very telling. I don't think this council will change from the intent of what we passed last week. So, you know, for me personally, I just want to make sure the wording is correct. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Lucy. To my right, Council Matheson.
So, you know, when I draft a document or pleading, the more often I go over it, the stronger it becomes, the better crafted it becomes. I think Councilor Anderson is right. We're in no rush. Councilor D'Angelo is right. It's not a perfect ordinance. I recall there was some discussion about offering a relocation stipend, and I did not see it find its way into the ordinance. I believe that this affords us an opportunity to craft an even better ordinance. We all agree that we're on the right track, so let's use this opportunity. The mayor, I think, brings some valuable ideas to the table, and if he didn't, I'd be the first one to say so. I also think that we had some valuable ideas that didn't find their way into the ordinance. So, you know, in particular, this relocation stipend. And the ability to grant a waiver in extreme circumstances. And back to the librarian issue and some other issues, yeah, I think that, you know, rather than overriding this veto, I think we ought to take a look at this ordinance and tighten it up, make it the best ordinance it can be. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Matheson. Council Nestor.
Thank you, Madam President. I am going to support this override tonight. Very simply, I looked down on the papers on the docket here, and we have a paper for the senior center, which has been tabled for 4 weeks, and yet those passionate speeches we heard, those same people have not talked to the public property chair or offered any kind of alternative language to that too. So that's what I fear will happen with this. It's going to sit and languish in committee. So What I'd like to do is move this out tonight. I will stand by my vote, move it forward as the head of ordinance. I will take up these points next week if that's the desire of the committee. I think it's imperative, as Councilor D'Angelo and Kinnon said, that we put something in motion and then we go back and tweak it if need be. But we need to move forward, or we're going to be stuck with the, much like the senior center, we've been sitting here for 4 weeks without any alternatives proposed. Thank you.
Thank you, Counsel Nestor. Counsel Crowe?
Since we already do have the notes from the mayor, I do think it's you have some things you can work on right now, so it's not, if you bring it back to committee, that you're not starting from scratch and looking for alternatives. He's already given you some alternatives, so I think holding it back to address some of those things is the right thing to do. Instead, why pass it, and then look for some other things and then tweak that later? You already have his points. It's 5 points. It makes sense to take those and work with them. So I'm in favor of going back at it with those and see if they can be incorporated into the without watering it down. I agree.
Thank you, Counsel Crowe. Counsel Spatafora?
Thank you, Madam President, and I won't, reflect on what everybody else said, but I would like to see that relocation package in there. Because my next point is, I think as a group, one thing that I cannot see us having in there, and I think defeats the whole purpose of this ordinance, is if you put an exemption in there. The city of Boston had an exemption in there, and they removed it because it became political. Now, if you make the mayor or this body, whatever way you would want to do under the mayor scenario, if you put that exemption in there, it becomes even more political, because what can then happen is, I'll just say it's the mayor's appointment. The mayor might say to 2 DPW assistant directors, and they both live outside the city, well, you gave me a really good, your reason because your mother-in-law lives with you and you're in hardship is better than the other guy who lives in Wakefield because, his house is underwater. And then it becomes more of, why did he get a waiver? Why didn't I get a waiver? So I think by giving us the power, for us to 11-0 to agree on anything is, I think, ironic. Amazing. But if you give us back that power to say, you guys, meaning the body, can decide on a waiver, it will never happen. And I think what will then happen, it will become more political, where we get in calls saying, listen, I know, I want to be the next DPW director. I know what's-his-face is in the line too, but I have a real problem. I really need to get this job, and, my waiver is more important, or my reason is. So, to me, I think the waiver defeats the purpose of the residency. Relocation, I think, has to be in there because I think in the next 5 or 10 years, anybody who's in that senior level who wants to become the police chief or the fire chief or the DPW director or whatever the case might be, and who has left the city, and they want to go to that, and I think you want to keep that talent, you give them some financial incentive to live here for that amount of time where they are at that leadership. But I think more importantly what it does is it's 20 years from now when a patrolman or a fireman or a DPW worker gets the job and says, you know what, I want to be chief, or I want to be in charge of DPW, or I want to be the treasurer. And those individuals are the ones who are going to decide to stay here long-term. Because, we all know firemen and policemen and DPW people who say, I don't want to be chief, I don't want to be DPW director, they can leave. So I think what this does, it's 15, 20 years out, it will change the demographics of our senior talent. However, I think by having that ability to go out and still keep the talent we have there at the senior level, who are at that point where we don't have the brain drain, as they call it in corporate, there is an incentive, maybe a percentage of their salary, to have them move back here till they either decide to retire or leave that position as chief or DPW or treasurer. So I think that those two things right there make the ordinance strong. But as soon as you put that exemption in there and you give us the power or the mayor the power, I don't want to decide who's got a better exemption clause than somebody else. And I just think that's the only problem I have with that. I think it waters down the entire ordinance. If you're going to do the ordinance, do it with listen, you got to live here. If you got to move, we'll give you a relocation. If you don't live here, you can't become in charge of the departments. It's simple as that. I think and it takes away from the political aspects of the mayor or the council. And it's not this council or not this mayor. Maybe 5 years out, when it comes to become a very tricky situation, it takes us out of the equation. So I think that's more important to, consider that. But, I'll recommend whatever this body would do. I think we should do something right away. We should send a message that this is important. If the ordinance committee wants to take it up next week, we're willing to go for it. I would like to get it obviously signed tonight, but if we have to change some language and some vocabulary and some definitions, we'll do it next week. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Spatafor. And before I do yield to Councilor Kinnaman, I'd like to ask that I can speak on this matter as well. I do think, as folks have said here tonight, I think in my time in this session, I don't recall an 11-0 vote on a specific significant change that we, the council, are making. So from a conception and from a support side of things, I certainly have said from the get-go that it is time for this to change. But actually, I think I questioned either we were only working and talking about in this ordinance the folks in the more department head positions, but certainly looking at, as the work does entail in our ordinance and where it is applicable, to make sure that other folks who reside here are also employed here. But I do want to state clearly that I think it is very respectful to take pause at this time, having digested and reviewed the work that we've been doing up to this point. I do feel very strongly that, listening to the comments being made tonight, as well as the suggestions that have been forwarded to us from the mayor, does give us that ability to make sure that when we make such a significant change in this community and how we're going to operate structurally, that we've done it with as much diligent thought and respect to other ideas that have actually come before us before we finalize it. So I do agree with all the councilors' comments related to the fact that this is something that I think the message is clear. We are moving into a resident requirement. It's just how we craft that ordinance so that it does have the effect that we're hoping to have, and that is to make sure that the folks who are filling our seats are obviously the best that the city would want to have in place. So thank you for allowing me to speak. Typically the president speaks last, but I have seen a light at the very end. Councilor Kin.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Point of information from the clerk. If this goes down, can we not take it up for 6 months?
If you override the mayor's veto.
Well, it's obvious what's going to happen here. None of us are blind.
Once you've sustained...
Sorry, David.
Once you've sustained the mayor's veto, you would have the option of referring the paper with the mayor's veto and his suggestions to ordinance committee, tabling it. If you do nothing, then it's just defeated, and you would have to wait 6 months for something that was substantially the same. But if you take these recommendations and refer them somewhere for further consideration, you've circumvented that requirement.
Okay. Madam President, one comment, probably more than one. Just so that the public is well aware of what the mayor has vetoed, in case you missed the last meeting. In the school department, there are 33 people who make over $100,000 a year. 2 of them live in the city of Malden. 1 will retire within the next 5 years, could retire tomorrow with the time in. If you go back to 1969, 100% of those positions lived in the city of Malden. If you go back to 1994, we were at 34.7% of those positions lived in Malden. If you go back to 2009, 15% of those positions lived in Malden. When many of us were growing up in the city, you would find police, firefighters, teachers, and many others who worked in the city living on your block. It is something, and again, this goes almost to the budget, a tragic vision that would once again happen here. The median salary of a family in the city of Malden is the median income of a family living in Malden is $56,000 a year. The median income, the average income of a police officer last year was $86,000. The average income of a firefighter was $67,000. And we all know that the average income of teachers is over $70,000. The median home price last year was $272,500. A number of years ago when going for this, it was stated that, oh, we can't afford that. We can't afford that on one salary. Well, in fact, in order to afford a home in Malden, you would need a salary to afford the median home with zero down of $65,000 a year. For 4 years prior to him becoming mayor, I met with the mayor many, many times. And Councilor Spatafora was there a number of times. And on each occasion, I would bring up residency as being an issue we must address and must address at the highest level, explaining things that were much like what we talked about here. The mayor was in favor every time. And it reminds me of how the mayor was also in favor of giving a free barrel on his campaign. So what we got going on here, as far as I'm concerned, is double talk by the mayor. And what he sent down here is things which will poison this. And the waiver, I can speak firsthand on the waiver. The fire department has a law, a state law, which says they must live within 15 miles of the community that they work in. But there's a waiver allowed. And the commissioner of a fire department can sign that waiver for extenuating circumstances. We have many, many firefighters living outside that 15-mile limit today. We have firefighters living in Maine. We have firefighters living in New Hampshire. For all I know, we have them in Rhode Island and west of Worcester now. That's because when given a waiver, most people lack the spine to stick to it. So I think, as Councilor Spatafora has said, put the waiver in, and you might as well not put this out, because it makes it not worth the paper it's on. But with that, I would like to withdraw my motion, and I'd like to put it back into the ordinance committee and ask that it come out within 3 meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Kinnon. One last, Councilor D'Angelo.
Yes, thank you. I don't think we need to do that. We should be prepared to vote this. We all voted 11-0 2 weeks ago. We can fix this in post. You know, this is not like the Massachusetts legislature where they have bills on the 3rd reading and they got all, you know, we've got city solicitors that are busy doing other stuff, and I am fully prepared, as the chair of ordinance indicated. Let's pass this thing, and we'll clean it up in ordinance next week. It should be no big deal. I will incorporate all of the things that we agree on in this letter, which are most of the things. The other things that we talked about in committee, we'll leave that out. But all of these other little housekeeping matters, let's just do that next week. There's no reason to take this off the table. There's no reason to withdraw. There's no reason to have this go down for 6 months more. I mean, you either agree with the concept or you don't. It's that simple. We can make the technical revisions that need to be made next week. You just heard the chair of ordinance say that we'll do it next week. If this will set a bad precedent to me, if an 11-0 vote, we can't even override an 11-0 vote. I don't know what that says. This is not throwing it back in the mayor. This is not that. This is not that at all. He raises good points. Everybody here concedes. He raises legitimate points. You've had the chair of ordinance indicate that we'll clean those up next week. Let's just do that. I'm prepared to vote the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor D'Angelo, the last time, Counselor Anderson?
Yes, I have a point of inquiry, please. And my question has to do with the process. If we send this back to, I guess I'm asking the city clerk for her technical expertise, if we send this back to the ordinance committee and we accept some of the changes that the mayor has suggested and not others, does that mean that it then has to go back to the mayor for his signature again, for him to once again veto it? So we could go back with a revised ordinance. Just hypothetically, we go back with a
presumably-
revised ordinance where we may accept some of the mayor's suggestions and not others. Does it then have to go back to the mayor for him to sign it once again and then come back to us?
Yes,
Yes, it
it's
does.
a new ordinance, so it will go back to the mayor for his signature.
On the other hand, if we do as the counselor at large to my right is suggesting, that we do pass this evening, we override this evening, do we still have the option of accepting some of the changes that the mayor has made or recommended? And then what's the process? It has to go back to the mayor again?
Yes. Yes, if you were to override the mayor's veto tonight, this ordinance as written would go into effect. You could then submit
Revision.
further amendments
Okay.
to the ordinance, and it will go through the process again.
Are you satisfied, Counselor Anderson?
Yes, I'm satisfied,
Okay.
thank you.
Counselor Lucy?
I guess before I make my motion, I just want to make clear. So on Council Kinnon's reconsider to put it back in ordinance, it would create a whole new ordinance and it would go back to the mayor and he could veto it again?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
I want my motion back on the floor. I didn't understand that.
Okay.
I did not, it's easy to make amendments to things. I don't want to go through this again, because I think it's a lot of mumbo jumbo what had come down here.
No.
No, they didn't, Dave. And to my right, Counselor Nestor, or, no, it's Counselor Nestor.
You withdraw? You have nothing? Okay. Thank you. Again, it was a good point by Councilor Anderson. This thing could just keep rolling and rolling and rolling, and we never get this ordinance in, as was almost my point earlier. So I would hope that as 11-0 vote, we could sustain that tonight and vote again 11-0 to get this going. I'm more than happy to bring up the mayor's amendments next week in ordinance and vote them right out.
Thank you, Counselor Nestor. Counselor Spatafora?
But wouldn't, if the committee or the council as a whole were to, obviously it's a priority, I think, for the entire committee, council, rather. If we were to get this done within the 3 meetings, which I think could be done, and it comes back to the floor and then sent back up to the mayor, and the mayor, because for one of the amendments that we made, doesn't sign the agreement, it comes back to us. I think at that point, I would think we would override, as I would think. I don't want to speak, but I think at that point, if the committee agree, because I think, and I would hope the next ordinance meeting, we all could attend. We could, I don't want to use the word bang this out, but get this done ASAP, but to send it back up there with another 11-0 vote, and if it comes back down, I think the override would be more than apparent. I think everybody's shaking their head there now, to some degree. All right, maybe it wouldn't.
Thank you, Counselor Spatafora. And I actually happen to, I think that's the kind of work that we can do that will yield the results that we were initially talking about when we were first reflecting on, or suggesting that we take pause. And I do want to clearly define the fact that in the past, when we've had to set goals or establish deadlines, we were able to meet those deadlines in terms of establishing a time frame in which we would come back as a body with another decision. I certainly want to be on the record as noting that when I look at the veto that's before us and the information that's been provided to us, I don't look at it as of any form of offense. I don't look at it as double talk. I look at it as maybe someone growing in their shoes and expanding their way of thought. I'm certainly someone who feels that I may correct myself on occasion, and I'd like to think that the mayor, in his effort to do the best by this community, is helping us along that path. Again, we're going to vote tonight one way or another, but I do want to, I personally feel that the information that's been forwarded to us has actually come after serious consideration and deeper thought on the matter, because it is, as we've said, an 11-0 outcome, one of the most significant steps we as a body are taking. So on that note, I'm going to work my way to the left. Councilor Anderson.
Yes, thank you. My earlier comments were to suggest that we put it back into committee and to give us some thought, give us some opportunity to tweak it. But hearing the response from my inquiry that says that going back to the committee, we tweak it, means that then we have to send a whole new paper to the mayor for his consideration, which he could veto again. I prefer then that we pass this evening and consider, once we pass it, the tweaks that we all think should be in place. I think that it puts the control back into the council where it belongs. We voted 11-0. I do want to consider some of those suggestions that the mayor has made, but I think if we pass it, so I'm reversing myself, I guess I'm saying, that based on the discussion that I've heard this evening, I think it makes sense for us to pass and then consider making the tweaks that many of us kind of agree to. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Anderson. And farther left, I'm not sure if it's Councilor Murphy or Councilor Kinnon.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Having heard how that would work, one of the, again, I did encounter this before by a very clever counselor who put in all kinds of amendments that would appeal to, each different one would appeal to people. So having misunderstood how it would work and now understanding, what you could see happening is some people like the waiver, some people don't like the waiver. Some people like having all these rank and file employees in, which technically I'd like to have everybody, but that's not going to happen. Some people like that. And what we end up having is, in a very clever way, and I certainly would not suggest that the mayor would ever do this, but certainly the other councilor did, it's called divide and conquer. And so that the next paper that comes out, rather than being 11-0, might be 8-3. And then all I have to do is say, hey, I wanted that waiver in, or I wanted all the rank and file in. I'm being reasonable, and again, having it both ways. I want the bags, but I don't want the bags. I want residency, but I don't want residency. You can peel away another vote, and suddenly you can't override, and a person can have it both ways. And I think Councilor Anderson makes a good point. Councilor D'Angelo makes a good point. And if we are going to pass other pieces, we can do them just as easily. The likelihood we're going to get to 11-0, throwing everything but the kitchen sink in, is probably not going to happen. The likelihood that we'll get some of these passed if we put them back, to committee and commit to saying, hey, whatever we can vote out in the next 3 weeks, we will, or the next 2 weeks. There are things in here that I'm not offended by, but I darn well sure know that the waiver issue, might as well not vote for it, might as well not put it out. So I do want my motion to be voted on, and if people really believe in these other things, they can be passed very quickly. Thank you.
Councilor Altrino or Lucy? Lucy?
Thank you, Madam President. Parliamentary rules are great. I think the only time you really run into them is when you have these events that most of the time don't take place. I was rather surprised that that's how it would go. I was all set to say, okay, put it back in ordinance and would work out whatever details the mayor has certainly put in there that, that needs to be worked out. But given, the results, if we do that, I wouldn't be for that either. I would just as soon, get it out tonight, you vote for it tonight, and then, the ordinance chair said he would take it up. So these issues that are out there, certainly, will be taken up and will get cleaned up after the vote tonight. And, and I have to agree that the waiver thing is kind of a dicey issue. It's where do you draw the line? So I'm prepared to, vote in favor of overriding the veto tonight, sending it back to ordinance in those issues that are on the table now, the ordinance committee to look at it. Thank you.
Councilor D'Angelo for the last time.
Thank you. Just a quick thing. I believe we only have 5 meetings after tonight, so just so everybody knows, it's not like we have the rest of the year. We only have, I think it's 5, somebody stand, I'll stand corrected, but it's either 5 or 6 meetings. So I think the urgency should be there to do this now. The chair of ordinance has indicated that, and that he's got a lot of other papers that need to come out of the pipeline later on that we probably are not going to have time with up against the deadline. Thank you.
Okay, so we're ready?
Are we ready? Councilor Altrino, last time.
Just a question, Madam Chair. If we do have an amendment to a particular paper, is that something you bring to the full council to forward to ordinance? Is that the process?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so procedurally, you want me to do the yes vote, would, no vote, would?
Yes, vote.
Okay. Okay, so the motion is to override the mayor's veto. A yes vote would finalize the language that you voted 2 weeks ago. A no vote would allow you the option to make an additional amendments. 8 votes are required to override the mayor's veto. Clear?
Everyone clear? Bob? Okay.
Councilor Anderson. Crow. D'Angelo. Kinnon. Lucy. Matheson. Murphy. Nestor. Spatafora. Altrino. Bucci.
No.
So it's 7-4, and the veto is not overridden. So now, has someone got another motion?
You can move it to ordinance. You want to make a motion to move it?
Given that the override didn't pass, I would move that we refer the paper back to the ordinance committee with the understanding that we'd work on these tweaks and vote it back. I'm disappointed that it didn't pass this evening, but given that it didn't, I would suggest that would be the best alternative for us. Thank you.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Yeah. Councilor Altrino?
May I add, with the Councilor Anderson's permission, that this be done no more than 3 weeks? Is that okay?
That is fine.
Yep.
Thank you.
So are we clear on the motion? Move it back to ordinance to be done within 3 weeks and back out for...
Is that part of the motion that I seconded? Is that an
Yes.
amendment?
No, that's the motion was to move it to ordinance via Councilor Anderson, and it was amended again by Councilor Altrino to add 3 weeks, a 3-week time frame on it, that it comes back here. Okay? You're still okay with it?
I am.
Okay. Second, roll call?
Okay, so do you want me to restate, or you,
Do you
everybody
want to
okay?
restate it for just the record? Yep.
Okay, so the motion is to refer paper number 335 and the mayor's recommendations to the ordinance committee with direction that ordinance report the paper back out within 3 weeks. Councilor Anderson. Crow. D'Angelo. Kinnon. Lucy. Matheson. Murphy. Nestor. Spatafora. Altrino. Bucci.
Yes. Nice.
So it's referred.
Referred, and it was
10-1.
10-1. Next order of business? Oh, I'm sorry, Councilor Anderson?
No, this is Councilor
Oh, Councilor D'Angelo?
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to pull paper 337 from the table.
337 is the senior center?
Senior Center.
On Counselor D'Arcangelo's motion to receive paper, to untable paper 337, all in favor? Opposed? On Counselor D'Arcangelo's... For the paper, thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. And I guess my concern with the previous thing was what's ended up happening with this is, we had something in place and it didn't pass, and now as a result, we're not able to have groups in the senior center. So I think I have something that would satisfy most of the councilors' concerns, and it is very simple. And that is direct the senior center to have hours until 10 o'clock, whether it be once a month or twice a month. I'm willing to debate that here, whatever they think would be sufficient, but just have extended hours. This way we don't have to get into all of the user fees and policies and procedures, and we can immediately get them back in there. Now, my motion is contingent upon having the policies that we passed in committee be in place, so that, again, just to be clear, groups that are going to use it for meeting purposes only can use it on those nights of the extended hours till whenever it is. If it is going to be, though, however, other things, then they would fall under the other provisions that we had debated. So that would be my motion.
Thank you, Counselor D'Arcangelo. Do I have a second?
Can I just have clarification? I like I think there's some vagueness in there, and I applaud Councilor D'Arcangelo for bringing this up, because we've had 4 weeks of this with no language in this. So would you amend it to one night a month, open to like 7 or 8 o'clock, maybe 9? I think 10's probably a little bit too late. So an extended hours, and again, everything else, the contract, everything else would still be in place, but it would give these groups an opportunity to get in there on a certain hours without having to pay additional fees. Insurance coverage would still be in there. And if they were renting, they would fall under the agreement that we have already discussed. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Yes, Counselor, that would be correct. And again, to me, this is a perfect example of let's pass this, see how it works, and then tweak it as needed. I think this gets us to where we want to make sure we're not shutting any community groups out to meet.
All right, I would second that motion. Thank you.
Thank you.
For a point of discussion, Counselor Altrino.
I'm just a little unclear. If you say, I don't know, the third Wednesday of the month is going to be open till 9, so that means it opens at the regular time at 8:30 or so. So are we paying someone overtime to stay in that building? And so and my second question is, so say I'm the ABC group, I can then go on that third Wednesday at 7 o'clock, use the senior center, and since it's open, I don't have to pay the fee nor get the insurance. Is that correct?
No, this would be for meetings only for groups as designated within the policies and procedures that we already promulgated that were brought to a vote and ended up to the tabling. So if we refer back to those, it's addressed within those. So I'm not changing anything else. All we're doing is keeping it open one night. And I'm also open to, if the administration wants to move hours around so that maybe they open later one day, or they arrange schedules so people, the same amount of hours is there, just maybe the coverage is a little bit different. So we extend the hours so that we're not really increasing overtime or anything like that. We should be able to put that management in place. I think we could work with the administration on that to make sure that there's somebody there to be able to cover it.
Do I still have the floor, Madam? But I'm not sure I understand the whole purpose of it then. If it's open till 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock, whatever, and I'm one of the groups within the policy, what would be the benefit if I'm still paying the rates that are agreed and getting the insurance? What's the I'm still not following you what the benefit would be to keep it open.
So remember, the policies and procedures and user fees that we debated, those were for extra time only. So let's put that to the side. I would assert in my motion that still applies if you want to use it at extra time. But we'll be able to accommodate people by making one night, quote unquote, regular time. So it won't be extra time. It's just regular time, just pushed out. And we can kind of like designate that as the meeting night. This way we can accommodate all of the groups that want to have their meetings without having to go into user fees and all of the other stuff. That will still be in place. So if you want to rent it on a Saturday, the regulations that we promulgated already with the city solicitor, with the administration, the forms that we have, all that stuff would still go into effect for the special time, if you will. But we just make one night so that just the senior center is open just extended hours, so that none of that stuff even comes into play.
So doesn't that restrict them more, saying you have to have your meetings on the third Wednesday of the month or whatever, and the rest of the months, the rest of the days, it's just closed?
Go ahead.
Thank you. Unfortunately, it would be a little limiting that way, but to me, that's the trade-off. And again, whether we want to do it one night a month, 2 nights a month, I'm fully open to whatever the counselors want to do here. I think, I'm reasonable in that. I'm trying to respond to the groups, and again, this has gone now 4 weeks, and I'm concerned that if it continues to just go down the road, now we're getting into holiday functions, now we're getting into planning for the, you know what I mean? I want to try to avoid that. Let's just get these groups in there and functioning. That's the thrust of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Council D'Angelo. We do need a point of clarification.
Councilor D'Angelo, I recorded your motion as a motion to direct the senior center to extend the hours of operation until 10 p.m. one night a week to allow groups to use the facility for meeting purposes only, with all other uses to fall under the policies proposed by the Public Property Committee.
Yes, that is my motion, and I'm open to amending if the counselors want to go with a different time and a different frequency, rather than once a week, once a month, or whatever. I'm open to that. But yes, that is the motion.
The point of confusion seems to be, if those groups used the senior center on the evening that it had extended hours, they would not be required to have insurance or to pay a rental fee.
Yeah, that's my motion.
If they used it at any other time, they would be required. Okay.
Yes, that's my motion.
It's not what Jim Cuddy seconded.
Exactly that. No. Right.
So now it has no second. I'll second it if it waives the fees and the insurance requirement. I'll second it.
So now it does have a second.
So we're back in the same position.
Madam President.
Yes, Councilor.
I'm sorry, Council. We've already put the
Councilor
insurance through, I think, last week or the week before. As a council, we voted that they have to have insurance.
Correct.
So, again, I would...
That is still...
Well, you just said it wasn't. So that is still in effect per your motion, correct?
I'm sorry, let me clarify. Anything that's been done previously would still stand. Now, I would assert, from speaking with some of the counselors here, that that piece may or may not be applicable or moot. So to me, I'm not as concerned with that as I am just putting the extended time. I believe if they go on the extended time, they're covered under the current stuff that we're operating under. So I think we're fine with that. That's why I think if we just
I think
extend the
last week we
time.
voted in that any users have to have the insurance certificate. So I think that covers it. So I would, if you would amend your motion to extending the hours of the senior center one night per month, as other people have talked about it previously within the last a few weeks, of one day to maybe 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, but still have the insurance coverage. So that if anybody outside of those wanted to use it after hours, after the 5 or 6, they would still have to go through the contracting that we already had.
If they have,
Yeah.
my understanding is, if they have insurance available to them, yes, then they will provide it. If they do not, then again, in the thing that we passed, sign the waiver. So again, I'm not trying to change any of that. That, I believe, was already in effect, right?
I don't believe the waiver was.
I thought the waiver was part of the policy and
voted
procedures that we passed.
We voted that insurance binder was needed. Right.
We did.
Yeah. So the insurance binder is still needed. I think, if I understand what you're trying to do is give these groups an alternative so that they have one night a week where they can use it without incurring any additional fees.
Yes.
and they can roll it in, you know, the one night. They still need the insurance coverage, but they don't need to pay any of the fees.
That's my
And then
intent,
if-
yeah.
And then if they wanted to use it any other night of the week or the weekends,
Then they would have to pay
then
the
they would
fees.
have to
Yes.
abide by the contract that we have. So we're
Yes.
voting on the contract as, with this carve-out of it, correct?
But I guess all right, so I'm just going back to what we originally put that was on the table. I believe what was on the table was a set of policies and procedures. Am I not correct in thinking that? The clerk agrees with me. So if in those policies and procedures it addresses the other things, and again, those things are now only for the extended time, right? Right. So a Saturday, a Sunday, something we're not talking about 9 o'clock at night, right? So I would think those policies and procedures that were on the table would take effect.
Right.
So whatever that may be, the counselor that drafted them, perhaps he could interject with the particular language. I don't have the particular documents. So however we can I'm open to whatever you want to do. I just want, my thing is I want to get these groups in there. Let's have them in there for an extended night. Whatever we need to do to make that happen, let's do it.
All right, so
Because
this would be in
Counselor-
addition to the insurance binder that we voted out last week or the week before?
Yes, because I believe
Okay.
that's already in effect. So to me,
Okay,
it has
great. Thank
nothing to
you.
do with that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Nestor. Counselor D'Angelo, I'm not sure, again, I'm going to yield to Counselor Anderson, who's been patiently waiting to speak on this matter. But for my point of clarification, we did vote to have a insurance binder requirement. What we haven't done yet is, and again, I did miss the major meeting because I was, unfortunately, I was unable to be here. However, I think the difficulty that I'm still having, and I believe some of my colleagues are the fees that were established, just specific on the groups. Now, again, that still becomes a bone of contention amongst us. So I'm not sure with clarity that I'm in full understanding of what you're advocating for tonight, because it clearly says, what's that? Yeah. And again, I applaud you for wanting to take this off the table. I just think, again, it's another significant change that we're, moving forward with. I just want to make sure that we all are on the same page about this. So, again, my thought is that we are, I'm not sure if any of us were prepared for this discussion that was going to occur tonight. I know that in walking in the hall tonight, you brought it up to me. I had no idea what you were proposing, and I think what I said to you at that time is that knowing that this would be a topic for discussion, I would have liked to have some time to make sure I understood the contract and the last dialogue that we've had, where the last document actually stands. So after hearing this discussion, I am still a little baffled on what the request is, because it sounds like one night only we would have this, this possibility of extension. However, if I rented that one night, I'd be waived the cost, but at the other hand, if I did it on the off weekend, I would have to pay the fees, correct?
I think that you, the council president, has given me the next opportunity
Thank you,
to
Councilor
speak.
Anderson.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Anderson.
I was glad to vote to take this off the table so that we could have some real discussion on it, and I'm glad to have that discussion, but I think we need clarity. I would have hoped that the councilor at large, who brings such a creative idea, might next time do it in a written form so that we can understand what it is. I think we've all gone back and forth. What do you mean by this? Is there a waiver in the cost? Is there a waiver in the insurance requirement? When are we going to do it? So my understanding, even before I say that, let me say that I'm hoping to do whatever we can to let some of these nonprofits who have done such great things for our city get a chance to get into our senior center and use them, because I think we've all seen the great work that these organizations do, the amount of give back that they give back to the community, and we as a city should be doing all that we can to make available to them assistance in helping them to fulfill the missions that they're all about. So now, if my understanding of this motion is that on a particular night, and we can decide whether it's monthly or weekly, and we can even decide which time it runs up until, if our affirmative vote is to say that if these groups wish to use that time frame, then they are exempt from the $50 an hour. I understand that to be correct. And I'm not clear as to whether or not those groups would be exempt from the insurance certificate, or could they just sign a waiver? If they can just sign a waiver for that, then I'm all for this, for the interim. If we're still expecting that those groups under that unusual circumstance of that day and that evening and those hours still has to have an insurance certificate, then I think we're not really moving the process forward into allowing them. So I would hope that your motion calls for the waiver of the fee and the signing of a waiver on the insurance. And if that's the case, I support this wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Anderson. And to my left, Councilor Murphy.
Well, this is going to be very quick because I'm just going to ditto what Councilor Anderson said because I feel the same way. If we can actually make it so that during core office of the senior center, which is a community center also, that we have the waiver for the insurance policy and there's no fee for small meetings, small user groups, then I think it's something I could support. If the insurance certificate is still required, then I agree we have not moved forward, and we are taking the community out of community. That's what I think. We need to do everything we can to sustain our nonprofits and to help them help us make Malden a better place. They do it tirelessly. They do it with continued effort, not getting paid, with ultimate dedication, giving back on an annual basis in many, many ways. And I think we are just being very foolish and not seeing the forest through the trees by, hamstringing these organizations, which is why I voted against it the last time around.
Thank you, Councilor Murphy. To my right?
Excuse me?
I'm sorry, Councilor Keenan.
Thank you, Madam President. I think you were going to the left. Point of information here. We could vote this, potentially. And this is pretty messy, actually, and this is the way debate should happen. And I do like what you said. None of us were prepared for this discussion. None of us were prepared for this discussion. I hope we will always remember that and hold by that rule.
I think you'll remind me, but that's...
I think I will. So anyway, if we were to open this, we need to fund it to be open. Do we not? Because we're not just going to leave the doors open. So that would take the city council transferring money from somewhere. Do we have the authority to do that? Maybe Councilor Lucy can. I don't think we do. So I think we're putting the cart before the horse here. In this case, we should have this discussion, and this is why we have committees and not 11 people doing things. But we should have the discussion, invite the mayor down, and say, geez, Mayor, we'd like to pass this. Would you fund it, and where is that money going to come from? So that we could make the transfer at least from now until the end of the fiscal year, which is June 30th, to do this. In terms of just opening it up and providing it for free, if it's not the normal course of business hours, I understand. I understand some of the councilors want to please people, but I did provide you all of you, and you can choose to ignore it. And we keep going down this path on many issues, but there's a law called the anti-aid law, and you can't pick and choose who you're going to give things to for free. And in fact, you can't give nonprofits access to public buildings. If it's open, that's one thing. As long as it's open and funded, you can do that. But you can't go and say, we've already got a thing that says you must have insurance, and for good reason. To say you don't need insurance, sign a waiver, means you are aiding those groups who don't have insurance, and it's against the anti-aid law. So I just want to make that, we can say tonight, No insurance for anybody. No insurance for anybody, you can sign a waiver. But then you, the public, are on the hook for the day somebody comes in and we have multi-million-dollar lawsuit because we were grossly negligent in not requiring people to have insurance, which is the normal course of business for anybody who has a hall. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Kinnon. Counselor Matheson.
So one of the great things about Malden are these public groups, and I think I speak for everyone when I say we want to accommodate them to the greatest extent possible. If this motion is to keep the hours extended in order to allow these groups to use the building without a fee and without insurance, I'm all for it. That addresses the problem. If they still have to go out and procure insurance, and that's cost prohibitive or a deterrent to them, then that fails to address the problem. So I'm all in favor of keeping the building open. Why one night a month? Why not one night a week the way we do City Hall? And as far as funding, we can pass it subject to funding. Doesn't have to be a question resolved here and now. This could be, a vote of confidence in the direction we're taking. All that being said, I'm still a little confused. Is a waiver taking the place of insurance? I'm still not completely clear on that. I would like that to be the case. And as far as taking on, liability, we do that all the time in our daily operations. This building takes on liability right now. Councilor Kinnon, you could fall on the way off the stage tonight. I hope that doesn't happen, but we take on liability when that happens. We take it on in the schools. We're self-insured for a lot of business. And as far as giving aid to a group, if a study group goes and uses the library, are we giving them aid? I don't think so. If a group goes and pulls a permit to use the park, we don't ask insurance questions. Are we giving them aid? I don't know. I don't think that's the case. I think it's important that we treat all these groups alike. If they have insurance and they want to sign a waiver to use the building, just like a group that doesn't have insurance, we're treating them alike. And this is during normal business hours. I think that's a great way to address this problem. Those are my remarks. Like I said, I hope this addresses the problem with respect to insurance, because I think that's been our sticking point all along. I think that's why we have spectators here today. Thank you for the time.
And just for point of information, I have asked, the city clerk has gone out to pull the records related to the vote we did take, because there seems to be, again, appears to be some lack of memory, mine, I will say. I was under the impression we have taken a vote that insurance would be required. But it does appear that there may be some who are not aware that we took that vote, but I've asked her to clarify that, so she will return with, and I think that will help in this dialogue. Counselor Nestor? No? Counselor Crowe?
Thank you, Madam President. Now, if we extend the hours, then they wouldn't be required to do insurance, because we have people that come in during the hours that they are now. I was just at the Cultural Council, because it would be the same, let me finish. These are out of the times that, because I think insurance, if it was open on a Saturday, it's a special, something different. If it's during the course of the regular day, if it was on Tuesday from 5 to 7, maybe that is are now, they don't have insurance. I was just at the Cultural Council meeting, and there was a lot of grant applications that were going to bring their art or their shows or their workshops to the senior center during the day. We don't ask them for insurance. I believe if we extended the hours and people used it during those hours, then the insurance would be a question, because that would be the course of the normal day. If they want it on a Saturday, if they want it on the Wednesday, and it's not open on that Wednesday for extended hours, then it's more of an event, and then you pay the fee and you have the insurance.
Okay. So on that point, Counselor Crowe, again, I think we need some clarification on what it was this body voted on a couple weeks ago. Any other comments before I head to the left?
No.
Okay. Counselor Kinnon. Oops, sorry.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Just for clarification, Councilor Crowe brings up a good point. We have groups that bring their art in, And the art is so that the public can go see that art, whether it's the seniors or us. That is for the entire public's good. The ABC nightclub group that's nonprofit, that wants to go in there and have their meeting is not something I or you or the general public can attend. That's the difference. When it's for the greater public good and the public can attend, you can open up the senior center, you can have the arts group or whatever group, and they can go in there. But when somebody's going in for their specific group, closed to the public, and it's a nonprofit, it is against the anti-aid law. That is the clarification. And if people doubt it, I suggest you read what I sent you, and if you doubt it further, call the ethics department, the state ethics, which I have, or the Attorney General. And I think you'll find out that is the law, whether we like it or not. Now, in terms of, again, what the counselor is requesting, seems rather reasonable. We just got to get the funding for it to be open. And then, as long as it's not costing us additional or has an imputed cost, and we say, well, these groups have insurance, these don't. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Kinnon. I'll ask our clerk to read the paper that we in fact did vote in for clarification.
Okay, it was on October 16th. Public Property Committee recommended and the council adopted the following: that off-hours use of the senior center be prohibited without the express permission of the city council, which shall not be unreasonably withheld upon showing of a valid insurance certificate.
Understood?
So, but if the hours were extended...
This doesn't change that.
No, it doesn't, but what I'm saying is, if the hours were extended, those would not be off hours.
Right.
Right,
So the
right. So if the
insurance
hours
would
are,
not be
These
required.
requirements wouldn't be in place.
Right.
right, so if the hours are extended, these requirements are not in place.
Yep.
Okay, understood? Okay. What's that?
Yeah, call the question.
Counselor D'Angelo.
Thank you. Just, that's exactly what we're trying to get to. And just to clarify with what Councilor Crowe was saying, you were 99% of the way there, but I do accept the Councilor point down the end as well, where you are correct. I guess I would assert that by making it community meeting night, it does take on that purpose. That's part of my premise, and that's why I think this works, because I think it takes on that community betterment piece for that one night, for that particular purpose. So that's why I think it works. And again, it's not extended hours, it's extended regular hours. I think that's important. The Tai Chi group that's in there at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, they don't have to sign the waiver, they don't have to pay the fee. All we're doing is pushing that out until whatever you want them to, push it out till 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, one night a week, one night a month, whatever that is. To me, that's what the debate should be. Thank you.
Okay, Counselor, I'm not sure who left.
Just a point of information, because I'm thoroughly confused now.
To my point earlier.
So extending the hours, we're not saying we're going to rent it to ABC. We're not going to just let ABC Group use it for their own purposes. We're talking about the greater good of the community. If you're going to have an art show where the community can come in, is that what we're talking about, Councilor D'Angelo? Or are we talking about, we like such and such a group, we're going to let them come in, they don't have to have an insurance certificate. And by the way, I think you said everything in the original piece was still in place. That had insurance in it, that required insurance.
For extended,
No, for renting,
for rentals, yes, for rentals. We're not talking about rentals.
yeah.
That would still be in place. In my motion, that would still be in
So
place.
now-
So if you want to rent it on a Saturday, some
So are
group
you
wants to rent
talking about ABC nonprofit saying, I want a meeting, we're going to let them use a meeting room?
whether they're a nonprofit, whatever the group is, on that meeting night, we're going to make a community meeting night down at the senior center.
Without,
And
without insurance.
well, hold on. Instead of closing at 5, they're going
Yeah.
to close at, pick a time. 9.
Yeah.
So they're going to be covered by the normal provisions that are covered throughout the day in that facility.
And they're not supposed to be just letting anybody use that during the day. It's only for community benefit. And community benefit means it's open to the community.
And I would assert that as long as we make it community meeting night, that meets the qualification of community benefit, because I would assert a lot of these groups.
As long as I can go to their meeting, yes.
Let's call the question.
Yeah, then I'm sure all of them would be, they're probably dying for new members. They'd probably welcome you. So to me, I would argue
No,
that.
I'm saying you don't have to be a member. Just want clarification.
I would say you don't have to be a member, and I don't think any of the groups would have a problem with that.
Okay.
Open to everybody. I think that's the spirit of it. Thank you.
Counselor Nestor is withdrawing his second.
And I'm adding it.
And you're adding the
Yes,
second.
you did that 15 minutes ago.
Okay. To my right, anyone? Counselor Spatafor, you haven't spoken yet.
Not to make, I'll be honest, I'm thoroughly confused, and I
Yeah.
know we've debated this. The only thing I could comes to mind where I think is an example is, and this is the Council D'Arcangelo. So what you're proposing is, forget the insurance for now. City Hall is open Monday through Friday, with the longer day being Tuesday, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So now, if somebody wanted to come in here and sit in the foyer and have a meeting, right? Yep. But if they wanted to come Friday at 2 o'clock and rent one of the rooms, it changes it, right? Yes. Am I following that?
Yes.
So you want to change, now my other question is, regardless if you change the hours, if you extend them, or you add, meaning extending, meaning you're just going to take the number of, say, the 40 hours and just change them around? So one day might be 8 hours, the other day might be 5 hours? Or if you add hours, so say now it goes to 45 hours. I'm just playing devil's advocate because I'm a little on the hours. I don't think we can vote on changing the, if we're adding hours, we budgetarily cannot change it without finding the money first. I don't think we can vote on that ordinance. Now, changing the hours around, my other question is, do we have the authorization as a council to change the hours of operation? We can't deem City Hall to be open tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock.
We're the custodians of public buildings.
Pending financial approval. And I would assert, again.
I don't think you can do a pending financial approval.
Well, I would assert it's similar to what is happening now with MATV. And I'll give you an example. MATV has a particular, folks at home are watching this show by virtue of a particular staffer having assigned that he covers these meetings. We get out early one night, he makes out. We stay late, at the end of the year, it all kind of works in the wash. So he gets to come in late one day, he's not working 50 hours because he's got to cover city council meetings. It's built in. So I would assert they would do the same thing with the senior center. If somebody now is coming in and their hours are 9 to 5, well, then make it noon to 9 or noon to 8 or
So
whatever.
you're proposing a City Hall example, right? Like City Hall.
Similar, very similar.
All right, I'm with you. That's all I
Are
have.
you, okay, you're all set? And last, on the left, Counselor Murphy,
For the second time, I guess.
for the second time.
I just, point of clarification on this, just so it's not, well, actually, I don't want to say it like that. Councilor D'Arcangelo, in this motion, my question is, when a group wants to come in on this community meeting night, they would still have to fill out a form, so we would know who they are, and that they were in the center?
I believe that is in the normal policies that is in the motion that we took from the table.
And these meetings would still be limited to the definition of a user group in the original, which would limit the meeting to, I think it's 20 or less? Because I think we need some constraints around it so that we don't, all of a sudden, poor Jean on a community meeting night doesn't find herself with 500 people, and she's trying to, be the traffic director of where she's going to put them. So I do think that some of the original provisions of, we need to be identified They need to sign, the contract and a waiver if we want them to, but there would be no user fee, and there would be limitations as to the amount of people that could participate in these groups, because it truly is more of a board meeting type situation as opposed to, or not a board meeting, but just a small meeting type situation of a limited number of individuals, not a, large meeting of 50 or 100 people.
Yes, thank you. My intent is to go back, to use an example, is to go back to the thing we just did on the resident employment. Now that thing's never going to get passed. We're never going to have that. That's the political reality. That's never going to happen. I'm trying to take something that we've got other things on the docket. I'm trying to pull it so we can have groups in there. Is it perfect? No. But I would say let's fix it in post, tweak it in post. Let's adopt this, and then afterwards go back and tweak it. We did a nice set of work, and we should be prepared to adopt all of the policies and procedures we put forward. We did a lot of work on it over the summer. I think they're sound. This, to me, is a nice little compromise, and I just don't want to get bogged down again. We haven't gotten a substantive thing passed yet. I just want to pass this so we can have community groups in there.
Thank you, Councilor D'Angelo. Councilor Lucy.
Thank you, ma'am.
I'm sorry.
no,
I thought Barbara Murphy was going to speak.
I'm sorry, if
My
I may just,
apologies.
Councilor D'Angelo, I couldn't agree with you more. Believe me, I want to get something passed so that we can get these folks back in the senior center. One of my driving things I'd like to see happen, so I am all for it. It was a point of clarification that basically you're building on, you're building on the original consensus of what a user group is. I just don't think it's fair to Jean and everyone at the senior center to not have some constraints around it a little bit. That's...
I think we can work those details out post.
Okay, all right.
Councilor Lucy.
Thank you, Madam President. Again, we could debate this apparently for weeks and months and nights. Conceptually, might not be a bad idea. I think the problem I'm struggling with a little bit, and just when you say you just want to pass it, that always scares me, just want to pass something. But you might have a situation when you open it like you're talking about. Now, when you say if you go from 4 to 9, you open it. Obviously, probably most people aren't going to want 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. They may go into that time, but most of them are going to want, the earlier the night, I would think. And I don't know, number one, I don't think we have any idea how many groups are going to take us up on this, first of all. Now, all of a sudden, if you get a whole bunch of groups in on that one night, you have the problem, you have to have, maybe one person isn't enough to, to walk around, make sure everything's okay. Now you're getting into the cost factor where we do not know the cost to it. We can't just pass something. It always concerns me when we pass something pending funding. Not to say the funding couldn't be found somewhere, but right now we haven't identified it yet. But, the bigger part of this is, listen, there's a lot of groups out there. We may only see what comes out here tonight or a few other ones, but you go around, there's a city, there's a lot of people meeting, a lot of different organizations, and I think if you're doing something one night a month or something like that, and we have no idea how many people are going to take us up on this, I think you could be asking for a problem. So, I would, listen, I want to do the right thing by these groups too, but I don't want to make it so that you do something and then you regret it later. I would like to know how many people we would have there on the course of a night. If you're talking, 10, 15, 20 different groups, hundreds of people, then all of a sudden it's not just like small little groups of 20 meeting. All of a sudden you have, quite a few people in that building, and I think you might be looking for trouble. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Lucy and Councilor Anderson.
Thank you, Madam President. I support the Councilor Lodge's motion. I think the questions that are being raised are questions that are really management issues that get worked out in the procedures. I think that if the director of the senior center is the control of this, that the applications for a meeting would go through her with all of the paperwork. She would be able to deny if there was an over number of requests, spread it out to the next week. I don't think we have an issue with that. I think you can only handle so many, and she would be able to establish how many groups could come in there, and maybe it's only one group per evening. Maybe it's 2 groups per evening. But those are the management controls that we're paying Ms. Jean Benoit for making those kind of management decisions, and I would trust her giving her that control. I think further that in terms of the cost of the extra hours, if there is someone who does want to come in, a group that does want to come in, and that particular even to use it, then she needs to have the hours available through the staff person who would stay there at night. We may find out that there's going to be nights when there's no one who's going to want it, and we don't need to keep it open. In terms of where does the money come from, listen, counselors, we've got a bunch of money that sits in the free cash category that we know every year that we never put enough money into the salt and sand for the DPW, and when we need the money, we roll it out of free cash and we fund those things. So it's not like we don't have the ability to fund a few extra hours for a person at the senior center to be covering these very worthwhile activities. So I don't think if anyone is concerned about this break in the financial bank of the city, that's a real issue that we should be concerned about in terms of how many groups are going to be able to use it. I think that can be controlled through the director either approving or denying the request based on availability. I think, Councilor D'Angelo, thank you very much for bringing this forward to us. I think this gives us an opportunity to allow some of these nonprofits that we've all expressed concern about to be able to come in. It may not be perfect, it may not be everything, and we may end up finding that if it works, we might want to extend it. If it doesn't work, we may want to fold it back, but I think that it's very worthwhile and we ought to support this, and I would urge my colleagues in the council to vote favorably upon this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Anderson. Councilor Nestor for the last time.
Thank you. Councilor D'Angelo, would you consider tabling this until 2 weeks and then drafting up your language? Because myself, when I seconded it, I had assumed that the insurance coverage was still going to be there. That's why I had to withdraw mine for the obvious reasons that the insurance wasn't there. So would you consider that for 2 weeks and then make sure everybody has the language, we can review the language and there's no confusion? Thank you.
I would consider that, yes.
Thank you, Councilor D'Angelo. And from my seat, having not said anything, I do think that this is obviously an option we should look at. However, as we sit here talking about extending hours, getting more creative with the current 40-hour position, and also making sure for clarification purposes around the question that has come up regarding the insurance, I just think it would be incumbent on us to table it. I would support the tabling. For the mere fact, it would also give us time to speak with the director of the senior center to make sure that as we're making decisions for that individual, we need to make sure we understand the complexity of what that may entail. To the point that Councilor Lucy said, we do not know how many people. There may be, someone else mentioned that this is a center that should not be open. Who will be out there from 9 to 10 o'clock at night? But it may be an easier process to extend the hours. From my seat, it sounds like it would be easier to extend the hours till 7 o'clock at night, so that it still invites our organizations that have, who contribute very positively to this community to find a way to utilize it as a meeting space. So I'm not closed. I think it's a good idea and a good discussion to have, but I do believe the tabling, because I do think what we've talked about tonight, deliberated this paper here, because this is where it sits. I was asked earlier about moving the question, and this is not a paper that's in committee. The paper is here for the 11 of us to really vet out. So to Councilor D'Angelo, there is one last light on, and I would like to certainly extend a professional career. Oh, he's passing, great. So at that point, I think Councilor Nestor, you made the recommendation to the councilor who sponsored this to table this.
Yes.
Do I have a second?
Nobody moved. Are you moving to table your own motion?
He did.
I'd make a motion to withdraw and put back on the table.
So he wants to table.
He wants to table. Councilor D'Angelo, your motion is to table
To
it for
table.
2 weeks. All in favor?
For 2 weeks.
Oh, for 2 weeks.
Aye. Second.
And opposed? Passes. Table for 2 weeks. Next order of business?
Councilor Anderson's motion to discharge paper number 374 from License Committee, application for renewal of a livery license, Faris Mohammed, 181 Kennedy Drive.
On Counselor Anderson's motion to discharge from License Committee, all in favor? Opposed? Counselor Anderson. On Counselor Anderson's motion to grant, all in favor? Opposed? Granted.
On Counselor Anderson's motion to discharge paper number 353 from License Committee, application for transfer of a Class II dealer's license from Millennium Auto Sales to Wheels of Boston, 189 Eastern Ave.
On Counselor Anderson's motion to discharge the paper from License Committee, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? On Counselor Anderson's motion to grant, all in favor? Opposed? Passes and is granted. Next order of business.
Under suspension of docket rules, ordered that paper number 418, authorizing the mayor to solicit requests for proposals for the purchase of property for use as a city yard and offices for associated departments, and for lease of property for use as a city hall, be rescinded. Councilor Kinnon.
On Counselor Kinnon's motion to suspend the docket rules, it's a roll call. In the purpose, do we, I'm sorry, Karen, just for point of clarification, it is a roll call, correct?
If you would like.
Yes, I would like a roll call.
Councilor Anderson. Crow. D'Arcangelo. Kinnon.
Yes.
Lucy. Matheson. Murphy. Nestor. Spatafora. Altrino.
Yes,
Bucci.
yes.
So rules are suspended.
Rules are suspended. On Counselor Kinnon, motion to rescind, do you want me to repeat, do you want to speak to the paper?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, City Council. Last week, on Tuesday, October 23rd, 2012, the City Council voted to go into executive session, quote, for the purpose of discussing real estate negotiations. At the time, this is exactly what the docket said. Unfortunately, I believe that we were probably going into executive session to discuss issues with the Field of Dreams, which the MRA and Mayor's Office had been voted and authorized to work on by the City Council. To my surprise, the meeting was not about this. A number of councilors already knew, as was determined later by a show of hands, what the meeting was about and what the specifics were. A number of us did not know. The fact that the mayor would share what was supposedly for executive in detail with some councilors and not others is troubling from, if nothing else, an ethics standpoint. In hindsight, it is clear to me that we, the council, depending on how you look at this, potentially violated the open meeting law, as did the mayor. I say this for the following reason. The Attorney General provides 10 reasons that a public body can have an executive session. The number 6 reason in the manual, and I've provided everybody those reasons for executive session and those 10 reasons, right from the Attorney General's website. Number 6, which would pertain to what we voted, to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property if the chair declares that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiations position of the public body. Under this purpose, as with collective bargaining and litigation purpose, this is all from the number 6, an executive session may only be held where an open meeting may have a detrimental impact on the body's negotiating position with a third party. Now, the key word here is negotiating. At the time that the executive session is proposed and voted on, the chair must state on the record that having a discussion in open session may be detrimental to the public body's negotiating position. As I stated before, for Field of Dreams, we had voted to let the mayor and the MRA deal with that. On the East Side Fire Station, we voted to create a committee that the mayor could then, the former mayor and the current mayor could then look into properties and deal with those. And the reason we voted on that, and Councilor D'Angelo has stated this a number of times, is in Chapter 169, Section 12 of the City Charter, the City Council shall have the care and superintendence of city buildings and custody and management of all city property with power to let, to sell, purchase, or hire property, real or personal, in the name for the use of the city whenever it's in its interest or convenience may, in their judgment, require it. In each case prior to this, actually up until the Teen Enrichment Center, the City Council has always authorized the mayor to do these type of things. In this case, we had a meeting and found out about a negotiation. My contention is that we violated the law potentially because we did not authorize the mayor to negotiate with anybody on either a new City Hall location nor for a new DPW yard. In effect, we had put the cart before the horse. During the meeting, we took a vote to allow 2 RFPs as presented. There was no negotiation, and those weren't presented, they were written this week. There was no negotiating purpose to go into executive because the mayor hadn't had authorization. In the entire discussion should have been in the public view, so the public could understand about potentially leasing a city hall. Should we lease it? Should we buy it? The same with moving a DPW. Should we lease it or should we buy it? Instead, what we had was an executive session where the mayor had already discussed and lined up his votes to authorize the RFPs. Most troubling about this is that specific properties and values were named as having already been negotiated. Therefore, we already knew 2 parties who will respond to RFPs. One, and here's the RFP for the DPW for those in the public. There is one entity we know will respond with a bid of $4.3 million. This RFP has not gone out for bid yet. So clearly, you can't put an RFP out and know who's going to bid on it and the price. For the DPW yard, and the other at $19 a square foot to lease the city at 25,000 square foot space. For us to know anything of the kind before the RFP is actually issued is a complete violation of 30B bidding laws, and simple ethics would tell us it is wrong. Think about it. We know the price already, and we know the properties. It makes the RFP process a farce. Furthermore, the State 30B Manual, Chapter 8, page 81, provides specific steps that must be followed when acquiring property. Step 1, determine what you need to acquire. Now, I would contend, once again, when you read the city charter, that the body, the city council, is who needs to determine what needs to be acquired. It says, as a practical matter, before you acquire any property, you must determine what you need. The initial cut at determining your needs may be simple. For example, you may need land for a public works yard, a parking lot, or office space. However, you should consider the details. Number 1, for instance, says, do you want to purchase or lease it, whatever that property might be? In the entire executive session, no real discussion took place on whether to purchase or lease the DPW, as the mayor had presented a specific property he had already had some negotiating on with the MRA without authorization prior to the city council on price and place, and it was a purchase. No discussion on lease was made for the DPW yet. Funny thing, when it turned to the city hall, no real discussion was had on whether to purchase or lease, either as the mayor presented jacked up prices to build a city hall, which at least some of us had no time to research ahead of time, and which gets back to the quote by the city council President earlier, that we just need time ahead of time to look at these things. None of us were prepared for the discussion. None of us. The practice, furthermore, if challenged, it is clear we have given a heads up to certain entities who are set to bid on this what the price expectations are, and this violates 30B bidding laws and is clearly not ethical. Given our missteps here, we must step back, follow the proper past practice of the council and the law, and have public meetings about both these RFPs and what the criteria should be ahead of time. That practice has been to send property issues to Public Properties Committee or to vote to set up a special committee to work out the details and bring it back. Examples: leasing of the Emerson building 2 years ago went out to RFP from Public Properties and then to the City Council. Selling of a small amount of property in Linden, Public Properties and then the City Council. Purchasing of the High Rock property discussed in public meetings ad nauseum. Selling of the Linden Fire Station to Public Properties and then to the City Council. RFP to sell the Emerson building just this year. The RFP approved by Public Properties, no prices known beforehand. Only now with the new mayor and 2012 City Council have somehow made a mistake. Now the mayor determines he wants something, negotiates with individual members, and then we have a vote in executive session after about a half hour, and it comes out to the floor that night with no public discussion. As some of us in the minority have been saying all year, we must stop the shotgun approach coming from the mayor's office and do our job. This last shotgun approach has crossed the line, and when millions of taxpayer dollars are on the line, we must follow the law. It was one thing when the mayor put out an RFP prior to receiving approval for a teen center. It was still another violation of law when he negotiated and signed a 3-year lease on the teen center for $180,000 without City Council approval beyond a year's time. It is entirely another when the council is faced with a question which entails millions of our citizens' dollars. With that said, I ask that you support my motion to rescind the approval, and then, after that, to put it into Public Properties, or even to have a debate in public with 11 council members in public, so that the public can see what we're putting together, and we can have a legitimate debate on lease, rent, stay where we are, not stay where we are, and whatnot. We did not have that last week. We owe it to the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Kinnon. Councilor Matheson.
I take the open meeting law very seriously. I'm sure all my colleagues do too. It's something I've been talking a lot about recently. I do think that we properly convened an executive session for a valid purpose. Perhaps to the councilor's point, we should have continued some of that discussion out in the public forum. I appreciate the councilor's points.
Thank you, Councilor Matheson. Councilor Anderson?
Thank you, Madam President. I was bothered by the process that we went through a week ago, where without prior notice to me, as a significantly affected ward councilor, the idea of citing the public works garage in an area that would have what I think is, even in its best situation, an adverse impact on the folks of Ward 7 that I represent. So I'm not at all pleased with not being brought in on a earlier discussion, so I can at least wrap my head around what is the impact if we want to move the public works garage down to what is now a place that I'm not supposed to mention, but it may be in effect affecting my ward. There were other councilors who were brought in the discussion, and I think that what should have taken place is all of us got a chance to at least hear what the plans were. I mean, there were some members of the council who were read in on the process a couple of weeks ahead of time. For me, I mean, I heard about it in executive session, what the plan was. When I asked for a show of hands, there were some of you had heard about the plans, but if we're in this together, that is the city council and the administration, the legislative body and the executive body, then we certainly should be having better dialogue over these very, very important things. I'm not at all pleased with the potential siting of the public works garage. If it turns out that I'm overridden on that, I'm certainly going to do all that I can to make sure that the public works garage, if it does get sited in my area or near my area, then I'll do all that I can to try to make it as less intrusive, as least intrusive as I can. So I support the idea of us going back. Councilor Kinnon has written back to, in response to the RFPs, asking that the RFPs be broadened so that they're not so narrowly tailored that we don't have more potential bidders in on this thing. I think that Councilor Kinnon is absolutely right when he talks about the need for the council to have oversight and to review these proposals that come in, and not some other committee that only brings us the recommendations. So I would hope that we would support this evening. I certainly am. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Anderson and Councilor Nestor.
Thank you. I have to say that I'm excited about the plans that was presented to us by the mayor. And I think they're going to make a dramatic impact on the city financially, as well as just the general feel of how people view the city. I see a challenge to what we have done, really derailing this project and extending it probably beyond what needs to be. So out of a full abundance of caution, to make sure that the process is done correctly, that this fantastic idea does not get derailed and delayed, I will support this movement to move it to public properties. But I would hope that we do this the proper way so that we're not derailing this project. Again, I think that both ideas are fantastic. We do need to work out some numbers, but the overall tearing this city down, opening the street, moving the DBW is going to have such a financial impact, such a great impact on the city. I think we need to move it forward, and my fear is that if we don't do this, we're really derailing this for quite a long time. So, again, out of abundance of caution, I will support this motion.
Thank you, Councilor Nestor. Councilor Spatafora.
I would just, Councilor Kinnon and, Councilor Nestor and Councilor Anderson, both their wards would be drastically affected, as well as Councilor Murphy and Councilor Kinnon being in a butter as well. I just don't want to see the process be derailed. I would like to see the RFPs come back to public properties. I would like to see them broadened a little bit in scope. I am one, I don't want to say the names of the properties that we're looking at. There's a couple things in those processes that I do not like as a council, and that's just my own personal view. But I am excited about, being one of the councils here to at least maybe decide the fate of finally moving this museum out of the way. But it's important, I think, when we do move it, whether it be short-term or long-term, that this council does the right move or the right plan. Because I think there has to be some transition to get out of this building. There's no doubt about that. I just don't want to do it because, well, it's the thing to do, let's do it. But I would like, and I expressed this in the last meeting, I think when we're looking at this plan as a whole, I know there's 2 pieces of property that was mentioned in this meeting. I think there should be 3, and I want to express that publicly. I think we should have a plan when we move, not only where we're going finally to rest, and more importantly, what the plan is for this building. Because my only concern is, and again, I'm for moving this, getting out of this building. I don't want to see us move out of this building and it takes 7 months to get another RFP out, and then we have a building we're standing here that's empty, and that does nothing, I think, for the residents of the city of Malden. So I think part of this plan, and I asked the mayor in that meeting, was if we could get that sped up a little faster, because I think, if we're going to go A, B, we shouldn't wait 6 months to do C and D, because as this council has very much witnessed and experienced this evening, nothing is flowing through fast through this council, and for good reason. I think we're debating everything to the I's and the T's here. But when we move, the clock starts ticking, not only for if we rent another place or buy another place, but more importantly, what it is to maintain this piece of property that's sitting here. So, there theoretically could be a point where we're paying for 2 pieces of property, and that to me is troubling. But again, I understand there has to be some transition. I am for moving this building, but I just want to make sure that the council has an input and say in where it goes, whether it be short-term or long-term. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Spatafor, and Councilor, Councilor D'Angelo.
I'll yield if you were first, Barbara. Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. To speak in generalities, because I don't want to go back, there were certain members last week that asked to have this carry over a week, and I would just like to put out there that if we table senior center policies and we table residency policies, I would say those are important issues, but they're probably not as important dollar-wise as the impacts that these decisions will have. So I thought it was reasonable to ask for a week so that we could consider all of the complexities with this and raise some questions, which I think need to be raised. Pragmatic questions as well as strategic questions as well. So I'm not wondering it aloud. I'm really just trying to make the point of, on certain things, we're so concerned about getting it exactly right, when even if those things that we're hoping to get exactly right, the implications of them won't be seen for years, and the dollar amounts involved won't be as significant as the decisions we're going to make on this, especially where there's so many moving parts. That's the first thing. The second thing is related to the particular language. Again, I'm not going to discuss any of that explicitly, but to refer to it generally as we're going to be giving some of our authority away, albeit temporarily, to some review committee or somebody that's going to put together things for us to consider. I think we should be doing that. And I think the power to let what may be let belongs with the city council. It's in the charter. And I fully support going to public properties for that reason. I want to move City Hall. Everybody wants to move City Hall. I think we all agree. I applaud the mayor on trying to do something. And that's great. To me, this isn't about that. This is about, let's make sure we're doing this in a very deliberative fashion to make sure, because we all think it's going to go like peaches and cream, but we never know. And I remember in one of my previous positions with a particular parcel that involved the city, that it became very contentious and it never got solved. And to this day, it's not resolved. So I don't want this to become that. When something is presented as a can't miss, perhaps it could at one point in time. So I think I'm in favor of this, and I think we should take a step back, slow this process down, and let's vet all the questions that need to be vet. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor D'Angelo. To my left, Councilor Murphy.
Thank you, Madam President. Just for the audience, for anyone who's listening here, some people may not have heard the term RFP. A lot of times, the lingo or the acronyms get thrown around and we don't explain them properly. An RFP, for those of you who have not heard that term, is a request for a proposal. It's not binding. As we sit here tonight, I don't want anyone in the audience to think that this is moving so quickly that deals are being made or have been made. They haven't. Perhaps some negotiations have taken place. That's, discussion for another time. But the RFP process is a multiple-step process where you actually put out a document outlining what it is you're looking for, and different people, business owners, will come back to you with properties that might be of interest. At that point, you have the option to say none of these interests me, and you can go back to the drawing board and put out another RFP. It also gives you more information. If information does come back in, it gives you a better feel from a financial perspective and also from an operational perspective as to what type of properties might be available to you and how much they would cost. So basically, it allows you to actually put in perspective more of your plan and understand it in a better light. At that point, there's many questions that still need to be answered. I, along with, I think, everybody sitting on this council, am very excited about City Hall possibly being moved from the center of Pleasant Street. It will open up the square, and it's a wonderful idea. And one of the things that I was very excited about last week was the fact that we have a mayor who finally is taking action on this. He's actually coming to us with a plan. Now, we might not all like the plan. We might have some problems with the plan, but at least he is being proactive in trying to move us forward and not just sit in the same place we've sat for the last 20 years. Having said all that, I do agree with Councilor Kinnon on one thing. I think the RFP is too restrictive. I do think some of the guidelines need to be broadened a bit. I would agree with tabling it or sending it to public properties to have the RFP wording expanded a bit, or tabling it for a week. Would like to put some constraint about it time-wise, because I do think the mayor is on the right track, and I do support his effort, and I want to see us continue this process forward. But I do, as I said, think the RFP does need to be expanded a little bit more in order to give us a broader potential return from other locations that might be interested. So having said that, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Murphy. And that actually is the second paper or second motion that Councilor Kinnon. So let's discuss. We're at a point with no other lights. I think we're at a point where we can start the work on Councilor Kinnon's first motion. And I'd like the clerk to read that again. And
Order that paper number 418, authorizing the mayor to solicit requests for proposals for purchase of property for use as a city yard and offices for associated departments, and for lease of property for use as city hall, be rescinded.
so is everyone clear that, again, the discussion point of it going to public property? Yeah, could you read the second one so that we have clarity? That would be great.
The second paper, on which we're not voting now, is ordered that prior to solicitation for requests for proposals for purchase of property for use as a city yard and associated departments and lease of space for use as a city hall, the matter be referred to Public Property Committee for public discussion as to criteria for the RFPs.
So the first question is a vote to rescind, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So a yes vote would be... I believe this is dated October 31st, which is tomorrow. Okay. Roll call.
So a yes vote is to rescind.
Correct.
Councilor Anderson. Crow. D'Angelo. Kinnon. Lucy. Matheson. Murphy. Nestor. Spatafora. Altrino. Bucci.
No.
Okay, so it's a two-thirds vote to rescind. So it's 7-4. So it's not rescinded.
It is not rescinded. The vote is 7-4.
Under suspension of docket rules, order that prior to solicitation of requests for proposals for purchase of property for use as a city yard and associated departments and lease of space for use as a city hall, the matter be referred to public property for public discussion as to criteria for the RFPs. Councilor Kinnon.
Councilor Kinnon for the paper? Did you want to discuss any more about moving it to public property?
I think it's moot at this point. I'm just going to contact the Attorney General's office, so.
Councilor Kennan, I don't think it's moot. I think that
It is moot. For me, it's moot.
Okay.
For me, it's moot. We'll let the law determine what goes on here. Thank you.
The question that the clerk is asking, do you want to withdraw it? Your second motion?
Yes, I withdraw.
Councilor Matheson, he's withdrawing the motion.
Well, then what I had to say was moot. I agree with the city clerk. We might have still been able to send these over to the
Yep.
committee that you'd like to see them at, but you're no longer interested in that.
Yep, you're on.
I'm interested in following the law, and we'll find out what the Attorney General has to say now. Thank you.
Okay, so the docket.
Well, I have lights on, that's it?
Docket's
Docket is clear. Personal privilege, starting on my left. And I see Councilor D'Angelo.
I was just deferring to Councilor Kinnon if he had something to say. First of all, and foremost on everyone's mind is Hurricane Sandy. And I am sure I am one of 11 who wants to thank everyone in the city of Malden, from the fire, the police, the DPW, to the Emergency Management Center, to the folks who worked at City Hall for the last 48 to 72 hours during the storm, pre-storm, post-storm. Absolutely fantastic job. Calls were responded to immediately. The prep that went into the pre-work in order to set us up to get through the storm as well as we possibly could was admirable, and the folks were still working today. So it was just an absolutely incredible effort by everyone, a well-honed team, and just a big thanks from me personally and from every resident of Ward 5. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Murphy. Councilor Anderson.
I think we owe a thanks to our Creator for sparing us the brunt of Sandy. As much as I am thankful to the DPW and our public employees who did this work, we should be thankful to our Creator for sparing us what could be significant devastation. And so I would hope and just remind us all that we have a higher being in which to give our thanks to. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Anderson. Councilor D'Angelo.
Thank you, Madam President, and to everybody watching at home. Want to make sure we're not going to be here next week because it's Election Day, and want everybody to get out and vote. It's a very important election. You have lots of choices on the ballot. As from looking at our city clerk's office, it's a big, long ballot with a lot of stuff on both sides. So be sure you read it. Be sure you get out there and vote. And that's the first thing. The second thing is, as president of Rotary, tomorrow we're having our district governor, which is a semi-big deal. So anybody who would like to come on down to Anthony's tomorrow, 12:15. We'd love to have you at our meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor D'Angelo. Councilor Altrino.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to wish, I'm not sure when this will be aired again, but tomorrow is Halloween, so for all the children and families that are going out, just be careful, and hopefully the weather will be on your side. And I want to thank the John Hunt that I ran a couple days ago in Ward 4. I was pretty impressed, and they had a great record number of runners there, so I thought that was a fantastic thing for the community. And kudos to Councilor Murphy for running a wonderful one in Ward 5 that I had the pleasure of attending. So don't forget to get out to vote, as Councilor D'Angelo said, and thanks again to the police, fire, police, and all those folks that have helped us through the storm yesterday. Just be patient, the cleanup is on its way. So thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Altrino. Councilor to my right, Nestor.
That's all right. Go first.
Thank you, Madam President. We've started work on Waits Mountain. We're getting a lot of feedback, a lot of positive feedback. I've also been contacted by the Appalachian Mountain Club and then the Mountaineering Club from Tufts University about interest in helping keeping the park clean. So this Saturday from 9 to 12, 11-3, the Tufts Mountaineering Club is going to be at the park to help clean up, which is particularly important after the storm last week. So if anybody would like to come down and help that group, I'll be down there as well. If anybody's interested in coming down and helping clean up the park, we'll be there from 9 to 12. And I also want to thank the DPW, the police, and everybody that helped us with the storm last night in Ward 4. I think they did a fantastic job. So if anybody still has any issues with trees down or anything in their street or in their neighborhood that they need done from the storm, please feel free to call me immediately. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmaster. Councilor Matheson.
Just want to say a happy Halloween to everyone out there. I too was at the Haunt Jaunt this past Sunday. Great event. I was also visiting with some Ward 3 residents who have lost their power. The power remains out. Summer Street, Summer Ave. You know, my thoughts are with you. I know how difficult that can make things, especially when you have to empty out your fridge and throw away, you know, a lot of things that, you know, you wouldn't have had to otherwise. I do understand the power should be restored later on tonight. Tomorrow morning at the very latest. I did speak with National Grid on that. Other than that, I wish you all a safe, happy Halloween. I hope the storm didn't inconvenience you very much. And also, Madam Chair, as one last piece of business, that there will be a resolve under suspension of docket rules that I believe Councilor Spatafora or myself are going to propose, but I'll let everyone have their prerogative of their privilege here.
Councilor Crowe.
Well, like a lot of other councils, I was also at the Haunt Jaunt, and I think Foodie did a great job. The costumes were great. The weather held out, so it was a great running weather. And actually on Saturday, I went to the Cultural Council meeting, and you know, we just appointed those people. And they stayed there from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. to go through all the grants and a couple of times to really get the most money out to organizations and artists that needed it. So they were very, very dedicated and stuck it out there. And also to the YWCA, our Encore Plus Breast and Cervical Cancer Initiative had their annual Survivors Teeners Heart celebration at Anthony's on Sunday. And it is really just a day to treat survivors, to honor them, to support them, to, you know, they do haircuts and they do all these kind of things. So it's kind of queen and kings for a day. So I congratulate all those people on some really fantastic events this weekend.
Thank you, Councilor Crowe. Is it still personal privilege?
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to wish everybody happy Halloween as well. And also, I think the ward councils get to appreciate it more sometimes than the council at larges, but you know, we don't field as many calls thanks to the ward council, so I appreciate that. But I had the opportunity to attend an event for Councilor Trino, and in the meantime, I saw the mayor passing by, and he told me to just take a ride by the operations center for the storm. And it was on my way home, so I had no power in my house, so it was definitely worth going by. So I went by and saw the operations center in action, and you know, I think what every councilor said here, I could witness firsthand as far as how organized they were. They had, you know, several pieces of paper taped to the wall, and every time a call came in, they would write down the incident, the street, and if somebody gave their name and address where it was, where they were calling from, and they would meticulously call out to the, you know, different crews to make sure it was done, whether it be police, fire, and DPW. So you can understand how organized and how well it went by seeing kind of that back operation side of it. So you know, I want to thank all the workers out there in the street, especially I think the emergency management team that we had in place. They made it look flawless from where I sat, and it was pretty impressive to see that we had that in the facility. So I want to thank them especially. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. And from my seat, too, I would like to thank the DPW and as well. We had several trees. I don't know how the other wards fared, but it just appears during those tough times. We have some old linden trees. We're built on water, so they don't stay up at this juncture. So we've got streets that we know the trees are going to come down, and half a sidewalk comes with them. And fortunately, this round property was damaged, but nobody obviously was hurt. But the amazing work back to the coordinated effort. I heard the truck beeping. I ran outside of my house. There was Bob Knox with his helper in the right side, getting out, jumping out, starting to pick up debris. Looking at a tree that had gone down in Wesmer. running up and somehow chatting with the residents that had come out to obviously, look at what was happening, and lo and behold, underneath that suit and hat, it was Mayor Christensen. So he was actually out on the streets as well with his sleeves rolled up and hoping that the good folks could see the hard effort of not only his city leadership, but the DPW folks. But the Malden Police and the Fire Department were phenomenal, because you can't handle all these trees at the same time, but the reality is those, they're battling NSTAR, getting to their sites because of the electrical concerns. But, everywhere I turned, we had no lights. It was one of the darkest days I drove around in Malden. And yet we had our police force, putting themselves out there in jeopardy a bit. So I do want to thank them. Also want to remind folks, as my colleagues did, please get out and vote. It's such a significant election, and also wish everyone a safe and happy Halloween. Hopefully, weather permitting, those kids will have a little enjoyment. Seeing no other lights.
Do you have something?
Councilor Spatafora?
You want to make a motion to suspend docket rules, right? So I make a motion to suspend docket rules. Councilor, go ahead, speak.
Motion to suspend docket rules
Motion
for
to suspend docket rules.
purposes.
For the purpose of resolve to accept proposals with respect to City Hall Plaza and the building of City Hall, which we'll ask to send to public property.
On Councilor Matheson's and Spatafora's request to suspend docket rules, all in favor? Opposed?
No.
That was three noes. Right? Can we roll call this, please? Well, first we need to, for suspension of docket rules for purpose. Councilor Nestor. I'm sorry, Councilor Matheson. Can you repeat what you said?
Of a resolve to accept proposals for City Hall, which we'll send to Public Properties Committee.
So you want to develop an RF, you would
Yes.
like Public Property Committee to work with, to develop an RFP
With respect to
For-
the City Hall parcel.
sale of
Yes.
the
Yep.
City Hall parcel.
That's right, thank you.
Everyone understand? All right, it's,
Can you tell me the effect of the approval of this resolve?
Well, this isn't a vote on the resolve, this is a vote
Can you
to
speak into your
suspend
mic?
docket rules.
Speak into
But for the purpose of what? I guess I'm looking for the effect of what you're trying to accomplish.
Well, on the coattails of what Councilor Spatafora was saying last week, to allow an RFP to take place.
Last week.
Developed by Public Properties Committee with respect to the City Hall site. I think his point was that it makes sense to be empowered with that information while we're doing the RFP, the other two RFPs.
so this is for specifically for the sale.
And reuse.
I'm sorry, Councilor Nestor.
I'm a little confused. Would that be a competing RFP with what is out there now?
No,
No.
they're talking about selling this building and
Mhm.
reusing the land. So they're looking for proposals for who would like to buy this building, take it down, use the land, and what they would use it for.
Could we have that discussion loud enough so the rest of us can hear?
Can you explain that?
As I understand it, they're suggesting that we should develop criteria for an RFP to find out who would like to buy the land where this building sits and what they would pay for it and what use they would make of the land.
Counselor, I'm sorry.
The effect of which, since the vote to rescind the current RFP failed, this is another bite of the apple. Is that what I should?
No.
Different apple.
Different apple, well said.
Different apple.
Madam President, just turn the mics on so Councilor I think part of the process, at least in my opinion, if we're going, I think everybody agrees we want to move. I mean, that's just, I think, the question is, there might be a transitional spot for, we have to move out of this building. Given how long it should take to move and maybe encourage people to answer, or create, and then encourage people to respond to the RFP, at least start the process with Inside Public Properties of creating that RFP, and maybe if we decide to move City Hall pretty soon, we could send the RFP out as soon as possible. I think my only concern about moving City Hall, councilors, is if we move, it could take months for us to get an RFP out there. That was my, it's just a matter of, starting the process now.
I guess my comment then about having another bite of the apple was that the vote that failed this evening would have given us the opportunity to do what the councilor at large is suggesting. So in that regard, I see this as another bite of the apple, another opportunity of the apple. If we had just voted, if we had one additional vote that went the other direction, we would have been able to table this, would have been able to table the RFP, would have been able to deal specifically with those questions that you are raising, Councilor Spatafor, and so that's why I consider this to be a second bite of the apple. Thank you.
I have nothing more to say. It's a vote to suspend docket rules for the purposes of that vote. People have more discussion. we can have that.
Perhaps somebody would like to move to reconsideration on what Councilor Anderson indicated
Reconsideration and rescinding.
of the 7-4 vote. We only need one more vote.
If it's your idea, make the motion. But
I can't. It's got to be somebody who's in the negative.
Oh, I understand, but we have a current question before us, so why don't we handle the question that's before us? We need to suspend docket rules to even.
So
We don't need to suspend docket rules for one of you who voted in the negative to reconsider.
You're on.
Thank you. And, a few questions here. So Councilor Spatafor Matheson, this motion is so that we could evaluate what we are going to do with this building after we accept the RFP? So that so that it can all be looked at together, is that correct? So that we would know that, geez, that makes sense? This is hilarious. This is absolutely hilarious. And, here we go. So why don't we suspend rules and have a motion to go to public properties that we determine whether it makes sense to lease or to buy? This is exactly what should have been taking place, and the discussions that should have been taking place in public, in front of the people out there, in front of the people here, not behind closed doors, and not decided before the mayor dropped down here and said, oh, this is what we're going to do, and put, again, the jacked up figures, $560 a square foot, $450 a square foot to buy City Hall. This is just absurd what's going on here. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Matheson.
I didn't think that.
Move the, all right.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, move the question. I didn't think I was opening up a can of worms with this.
we can do voice.
Go ahead.
All right.
Do it. 'Cause this is Ben Carter rule.
The question before us is to suspend docket rules for the purpose of considering an RFP to be designed by the Public Properties Unit for the sale of this building. That's correct, Councilor Spatafor? That's correct, Councilor Matheson? All right. So, all in favor? Opposed? No. Docket rules say it are not suspended. A second for adjournment? Adjourned.